The BJP takes great pride in being in power in around 20 states across India. But the one state government where the BJP was a participant and which did absolutely no credit to the party's reputation was the BJP-PDP coalition government in Jammu and Kashmir. Well, today, the Bharatiya Janata Party, in a very public manner, pulled the plug from the J&K government. We had Ram Madhav, who was the BJP's troubleshooter in Jammu and Kashmir and a guy who played a key role in negotiating the coalition in the first place, making this announcement, dramatic press conference where he said that the BJP had decided to pull out of the government. Shortly after his press conference, there's been a series of very rapid developments. Mehbooba Mufti submitted her resignation to Governor N.N. Vora. And although the President of India is outside the country, we believe it's only a matter of hours before which you have a formal announcement of the imposition of governor's rule, in other words, central rule in Jammu and Kashmir. I'm Siddharth Vardarajan, and I will talk you through the hows and whys of this dramatic development that happened today over the next 10 minutes. And I think let's go back and review exactly how the BJP came into this very, very improbable alliance or coalition with the PDP in the first place, and then trace how this government evolved over the last 4 years before finally the BJP decided to pull the plug. Now, the 2014 state election in Jammu and Kashmir happened against the backdrop of Narendra Modi's spectacular win in the Lok Sabha elections of 2014. And the BJP was making a determined push in the state. It knew that it was on a very strong wicket in the Jammu region, but it also hoped to make inroads in the Ladakh area. And surprisingly, there was a lot of talk of the BJP opening its account in the valley itself. This was a highly improbable goal in many ways, but Amit Shah spoke of Mission 44, which meant that the BJP wanted to be the single, not just the single largest party or not just a major presence, it actually wanted to have a majority of its own. And that was what Mission 44 was all about. Well, in the elections which happened that year, the BJP did spectacularly well in the Jammu region. It did not win a single seat in the Kashmir Valley or in Ladakh. But in many ways, the over-projection of the BJP's, its ambitions led to a situation where opinion in the valley, which normally, separatist opinion, for example, which normally favors a boycott of elections, people rallied around the PDP and the NC to make sure that the BJP would not win a single seat in the valley. So when the results emerged, the PDP was the largest party with around 28 seats. The BJP had 25. Congress and NC also reached double digits. It was theoretically possible that the PDP and NC with Congress support could have formed the government, but this would have meant essentially ignoring the sentiment of the Jammu region, which had voted overwhelmingly for the BJP. And after a series of difficult meetings and difficult negotiations, many of which involved Ram Madhav, as I said earlier, but also Amit Shah, also Narendra Modi. Finally, you had this document, Agenda for Alliance, being signed by the PDP and BJP as the founding document of the government that they were going to set up together. I still regard that decision to form a coalition government by these two parties as a bold and a brave one. Highly improbable because the BJP, its entire foundational approach to Jammu and Kashmir is 180 degrees opposite to what the PDP considers the Kashmir problem to be all about. During the election campaign, in fact, the PDP said it would fight for greater autonomy, it would fight for improvement in relations with Pakistan, it said it would fight for the abolition of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, so on and so forth. And the BJP propaganda during the campaign was that the PDP is soft separatist, right? Nevertheless, these two parties came together, they set up a government, and under the chief ministership of Mufti Muhammad Saeed, seasoned politician, the government got off the ground in March 2015. Sadly for the PDP, sadly for the coalition, sadly for J&K and for India, Mufti Sahab died. He passed away in January 2016. PDP lost its most prominent leader, and in the confusion that followed, we had a brief spell of governor's rule before Mehbooba Mufti decided that she would be the chief minister, and in April 2016, her tenure began, again with the full support of the BJP. The last 2.5, 3 years under Mehbooba Mufti with the BJP support, by any objective yardstick, have been quite disastrous for the state. Sadly, the BJP and the PDP did not implement any of the major provisions of their foundation, founding document, the government's founding document, the Agenda for Alliance, which spoke, for example, of giving equal weight to economic development and so-called economic empowerment on the one hand, and seeking a political resolution to the problems of Jammu and Kashmir on the other. In fact, the Agenda for Alliance spoke about the need to properly sequence and balance and strike a balance between these two. But as we've seen over the last 3 years, the BJP showed zero appetite for pursuing any kind of political initiative, despite all indications in the valley suggesting that the situation was going from bad to worse. The Agenda for Alliance had even referred to the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government's dialogue efforts with the Hurriyat, and said how this new government would engage in dialogue with all stakeholders, that it would also talk to Pakistan, that it would look at ways of enhancing people-to-people exchanges between the two parts of Jammu and Kashmir. It spoke of all kinds of initiatives, none of which were pursued at all by the government, largely because the BJP as a political party and the central government as an institution remained completely cold to these fundamental provisions. Not only that, it seems as if the central government had decided, obviously based on the BJP's own reading of Jammu and Kashmir in a historical sense, that all talk of autonomy, all talk of political dialogue would be counterproductive, that this would only play into the hands of separatism in some way, and that what was needed was a kind of enforced normalization of the situation in Kashmir, first and foremost through a policy of zero tolerance towards militants, towards terrorism, towards cross-border incidents. So we saw from 2016 onwards very, very aggressive, muscular policy by the security forces, essentially. And Ram Madhav boasted of this in his press conference today when he said that the government had, during this period, the security forces during this period had neutralized more than 600 terrorists. Now, from a security point of view, there's no doubt that shooting to kill people who've taken weapons against you could be considered a great achievement. However, from a political point of view, analysts in the state and even analysts in Delhi and even many voices within the government were arguing that this policy of acting against militants, shooting to kill, would be counterproductive. It has, in fact, proved counterproductive. The most spectacular example was the case of Burhan Wani, former commander of the Hizbul Mujahideen, whose death in an encounter in 2016 was the trigger for a mass uprising on an unprecedented scale. Young people took to the streets for days, weeks, and months on end, leading to a whole range of civic disturbances. You had massive instances of stone pelting. The government security forces responded with the use of rubber pellets, which led to the killing in many instances, the blinding of people, and again, a huge increase in public resentment towards the government of Jammu and Kashmir, towards the coalition government, towards the PDP, and of course towards the government of India and the security forces as a whole. This policy of zero tolerance, or looking at Kashmir's militancy as almost entirely a security or a law and order problem, which did not require any political initiatives, also, in my view, led the security forces to commit certain cardinal errors, human rights violations, and the most spectacular example of which was the case of Farooq Ahmed Dar, who was this Kashmiri voter who happened to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time and found himself strapped to a jeep and driven around by the army for several hours through the valley, allegedly as a warning to stone pelters. But they picked the wrong guy. They used a method that can have no justification either under the Indian Constitution or under the Indian Penal Code or the Army Act. And despite having violated the law in all of these multiple ways, the army and the government responded by celebrating the major who had committed this act. And I think all of this led to a situation of greater and greater resentment. Apart from this, the situation on the line of control has remained alarming for most of the last 4 years. Incidents have increased, firing, violation of ceasefire, and the government's approach, declared approach of responding to fire with fire, in a way sending even greater amounts of ordnance in response to any violation of the ceasefire by Pakistan, has not produced the kind of results that the BJP and the Modi government said it would. That I would also add to the list of failures if we were to make a balance sheet of the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. But I think the biggest problem, and this is something that now the BJP will directly have to confront, was the utter confusion and utter lack of coherence within the BJP and within the central government as to what the best line of action in dealing with Kashmir's problems ought to be. We saw this dissonance as recently as Ramzan, when even a decision so simple, or you could say so complex from a military point of view, but a decision that of whether to declare a Ramzan ceasefire during the Ramzan period or not, there was division within the government. You had the Raksha Mantri, Nirmala Sitharaman, essentially saying that we don't want this. Finally, Rajnath Singh announcing this, and the ceasefire, because it came amidst this kind of confusion, because it came bundled with no political initiative of any kind, proved again to be one of those spectacular failures which had become the hallmark of the Modi government's Jammu and Kashmir policy over the last 4.5 years. In conclusion, any which way you look at it, whether from the point of view of economic development, whether from the point of view of political initiatives, whether from the point of view of security, we saw recently the terrible assassination of our colleague Shujat Bukhari, former editor of the Rising Kashmir, and in many ways it was quite astonishing to see Ram Madhav, whose supporters in the media over the last several months and years have been decrying people like Shujat Bukhari as soft separatists and so on and so forth, today citing his death as in a way an example as the prime reason why the BJP was pulling out. And it was remarkable that Ram Madhav even forgot Shujat Bukhari's name while invoking his memory in order to justify this decision. So, from the security point of view, from the human rights point of view, from the political point of view, from every which way you look at it, from India-Pakistan relations, the Modi government's approach to Jammu and Kashmir over the last 4.5 years has been nothing short of disastrous. The situation in the valley is disastrous today. Public alienation is at an all-time high. Even if the centre's game plan, after a short period of governor's rule, is to go in for elections either to coincide with the state elections in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and other states in November, December this year, or perhaps to go in for elections to time it with the Lok Sabha elections of April, May next year. Any which way you look at it, public participation in these elections in the valley is likely to be at a low point. Today, as I said, I recently came back from the valley. Public disenchantment, even among people who voted in the last few elections or who had canvassed for elections or who had encouraged others to vote. Public disenchantment today is at an all-time high. And much as the BJP would like to put the blame for the sorry state of affairs on the PDP no doubt cannot escape blame for the situation. And in many ways, its primary misfortune, fundamental misfortune, is that when this coalition broke, it was finally at the instance of the BJP and not the PDP that the coalition broke. Had Mehbooba walked out, she might have salvaged something political from this, but the BJP ending the coalition, to my mind, adds a further nail in the coffin of the PDP in the valley. So any which way you look at it, disastrous last 4 years. The PDP is responsible, but so is the BJP, and I would say the share of the BJP in this disaster is perhaps even more because it controls the central government, which plays a decisive role in economic, political and security matters in the valley and, of course, in Jammu and Kashmir.